Tonight, a mystery at sea. 3 boys and a father drowned, shipwrecked on a family vacation. A mother left alone to grieve, guilty that she didn't go along.
We were a family, we belonged together. I should have been with them.
Her entire family died just a mile from shore. Why didn't the Coast Guard respond to this mayday? And why did reports of a second desperate cry from the stormy waters go unanswered by rescuers?
Obviously, hindsight being what it is, it was poor judgment.
Cynthia McFadden with the story of a shipwreck that will tear at your heart and has shaken the U.S. Coast Guard to its core. Waters.
The sea can be unforgiving and unpredictable. It can overwhelm even the most experienced sailor and destroy even the most carefully made plans. For 200 years, mariners have depended upon the U.S. Coast Guard to help them when disaster strikes. But ever since one woman lost her entire family in a shipwreck off Charleston, South Carolina 2 years ago, questions about how the Coast Guard responded have shaken the venerable institution.
So many wrong things happened. There was more than one opportunity for them to have been saved. They just missed them all.
The last time Libby Cornett saw her family alive was when her sons, Paul and Daniel, kissed her goodbye and left with their father, Michael, and cousin, Bobby Lee Jr., setting sail on the 34-foot Morning Dew from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, to Jacksonville, Florida, where they were to meet up with her. It was the boys' dream vacation.
Were your sons excited about the prospect?
Oh, they were so excited. Paul and Daniel stayed on the phone with Bobby Lee, talking about what they were going to take and what kinds of CDs they were going to take with them.
Bobby Lee's father, Bobby Hurd Sr., said the 3 cousins were best buddies.
We called them the 3 amigos. They were real close. Every time they got together, like it was a big deal. It was a great adventure.
While 14-year-old Bobby Lee hadn't done much sailing, his cousins, who were 16 and 13, had. In fact, Paul, the oldest, was born while his family was living on a sailboat.
We taught Paul and Daniel how to sail from early on.
And while the family had sailed many times on the open ocean, this trip down the intercoastal waterway, known to sailors as the Ditch, was planned as an easy family trip.
There are some mothers who would say, at the prospect of her husband and children and nephews sailing from Myrtle Beach to Florida, I'm terrified, don't do this. This was not your reaction to this plan.
No, this was going to be strictly an intercoastal trip. There were never any plans to go offshore.
Michael Cornett's other passion, besides sailing, was music. He was raised on country. His second cousin, June Carter, married singing legend Johnny Cash. Cornett himself was an accomplished composer and musician. Not surprising, many of his songs were about the sea.
Safe from gale and storm, but I found that easy life is so much hard.
December 26th. The trip started off as planned. Mike and the boys stowed their gear, 5 life preservers and a pile of CDs among their stuff. They spent the night on board. December 27th, Mike and the boys pushed off from the berth just after noon. Mike checked the weather. Clear sailing all day was predicted, although storms were forecast for late the next day. December 28th, the second day on the water. At 2:30 in the afternoon, the Morning Dew passed a salvage boat. Ronnie Campbell was at the helm. He says he watched as the Morning Dew made a devastating mistake. Instead of heading into the intercoastal waterway, Mike Cornett apparently missed the channel marker and sailed the boat out toward open sea.
Well, he went this direction, but he should have went to the right, which was the intercoastal waterway. That's the last time I seen him.
Locals say it's a turn that plenty of pleasure boats miss, but missing it means turning around or ending up in the shipping channel and open ocean.
I tried to hail him on the radio just to find out, if he was going the wrong way so he would know, but he never did come back on the radio. And I said, well, he'll turn around when he gets to the ocean like most of them do, but obviously he didn't turn around.
didn't turn around even though the weather was getting worse.
Was your husband a qualified sailor to have 3 little kids out on a boat with him?
Oh, absolutely. I know in my heart that Mike would never have done anything to put those boys in danger.
Though danger was right around the corner. Mike Cornett decided to sail the next 50-mile leg of the trip to Charleston in open ocean. But the weather turned bad even faster than predicted. Johnny Sturr was an apprentice pilot working Charleston Harbor that night.
Quite frankly, it was miserable. The winds were blowing at the northeast, probably about 25, maybe 30 knots. Seas were roughly 5 feet.
10 hours after missing the turn for the Intracoastal Waterway, the Morning Dew approached the mouth of Charleston Harbor. When they saw the flickering lights of the city, they must have thought they had made it.
It was raining, it was cold. I'm sure they must have had an absolutely miserable transit from Georgetown to here. How they even made it this far, I don't know.
But with the winds approaching gale force, something went terribly wrong. The Morning Dew crashed onto the rocks of the Charleston jetty. It was just after 2 in the morning, and they were just 1 mile from shore. 9 hours later, at 11 a.m., a tourist called the police saying that 2 bodies had washed up on the beach. 2 teenagers only partially clothed. Near them was a rescue ring with the words, "Morning Dew." Within hours, Paul's body would be found too, but it would be 3 weeks before Mike's body was discovered, and Libby Cornett knew for certain her entire family had drowned at sea.
You might well have been on that boat with them.
I wish I had been, yes.
Do you think you could have done something different?
Maybe, but we were a family, we belonged together. I should have been with them.
After the tragedy, Libby came to Charleston, weighed down by grief and by questions. What happened in those early morning hours?
I had to know. I had to keep going. I had to keep pushing to know.
She says what she discovered after months of searching was that her family did not have to die. It took 3 days for the water to calm down enough for salvage crews to recover the Morning Dew. And while we may never know precisely what happened that night, Libby Cornett believes her husband was tossed overboard on impact and that her oldest son dived in the water to help him. Investigators say the sailboat was driven across the top of the jetty by the rising tide. Libby Cornett believes the younger boys stayed with the boat as long as they could.
They were out there alone. It was cold. Late at night.
And they could literally see the city.
The whole city of Charleston. The lighthouse right there and the harbor was right there in front of them. I just kept thinking they're sitting there and they're seeing this and hoping that help is going to come.
But of course, help never did come. In fact, the Coast Guard told Libby the Morning Dew never even sent a call for help.
My family and friends had called and asked the Coast Guard, had there been any distress calls? The answer was no. I kept asking questions. I kept saying, this makes no sense to me. I can't accept this.
And Libby Cornett soon found out she was right. There was more to the story. She now believes there were 2 chances her family could have been saved, and both times the Coast Guard failed her. 2.5 months after the accident, the terror of that night was made real when the commander of Base Charleston came to see her.
He pulled out his tape player and put a tape in it and asked me if I could recognize the voice.
Mayday, U.S. Coast Guard, come in.